Hey guys, how are you all doing? This is the MMA breakdown with my predictions for UFC 170, Rousey versus McMann. My quick overall impression of this card. Prelim card, kind of weak. A few interesting fights on there. The main card, I think, is actually really good. You know, there's some fighters on there. Mike Pyle, TJ Waldburger, usually prelim fighters, but a lot of matchups I'm really excited for. And, you know, we have a title fight. Obviously very unfortunate that Rashad got injured and had to pull out of his fight with Cormier. That was a very important fight, and I was really looking forward to that. And they have this newcomer, Patrick Cummins, stepping in for Rashad. But I think the main card is still pretty exciting. But let's run through the card. I'll give you my predictions on all the fights. Starting off with the UFC Fight Pass prelim card at lightweight, Ernest Chavez versus Yosdenis Cedeno. Newcomers, I've never heard of these guys. They don't have a page I can pull up here on Wikipedia, so I'm not going to make a pick there. I don't know. Next up, at lightweight, Rafaelo Oliveira versus Eric Koch. I think Koch is going to win this fight easily. Oliveira is only 1-3, I believe, since coming to the UFC. He lost to T-Bow, lost to Yves Edwards, and lost to Barboza, and he was finished in all of those fights. His only win was against Yoslandi Izquierdo, UFC 148, and I can't recall that fight at all. But I think he looked best against Gleison T-Bow. That was his debut in the UFC. You know, before he got finished in that fight. But against Yves Edwards and Edson Barboza, the guy was just totally outclassed on the feet. I think I'm starting to remember the Izquierdo fight a bit. And Oliveira's obviously a ground guy, BJJ black belt. That's where he's going to be looking to get the fight, is on the ground. But Eric Koch, I think he's just far more skilled, and he's fought far better competition. He is on a 2-fight losing streak to Lamas and Poirier, although I think he showed great heart in that last fight against Poirier after getting cracked on the feet, nearly knocked out, and almost he locked on a triangle after getting knocked down, and was able to, you know, last throughout the fight and take it to decision. But Koch has shown some good power. He has a knockout over Rafael Asuncao. He also has a knockout over Francisco Rivera from the WEC. And he showed some pretty good submission skills, I thought, and submission defense as well in his last fight against Dustin Poirier. So I think Koch is, you know, I think he's almost a top contender at. Oh, and this is at lightweight. I'm sorry, I completely forgot this. I didn't realize. I guess this is going to be Koch's debut at lightweight. I think that should work out well for him. He's a pretty big guy. He was a big guy at featherweight, but I think he's going to TKO Oliveira early, first round. Next up, onto the Fox Sports 1 prelim card at flyweight, Zach Makovsky versus Josh Sampo. I was impressed with Makovsky in his last fight, surprising everybody, beating Scott Young Guns Jorgensen. Showed some pretty crafty grappling and wrestling in that fight, able to get Young Guns down a lot. And I remember him getting some pretty good reversals in that fight as well when he was on bottom. But he looked solid. Josh Sampo, on the other hand, he missed weight in his last fight, which was against Ryan Benoit. But He was really aggressive in that fight, as I remember, especially on the ground. He looked very good, and eventually finished Benoit with a rear naked choke. And I'm gonna take tough, close matchup. I'm gonna go with. I think I'll go with Makovsky. I think he really proved himself with that last win over Young Guns, even though he didn't seem really close to finishing him. But he did win the striking and the grappling against Young Guns. And while Josh Sampo seemed more capable of finishing the fight, I can't compare, a strong performance against Ryan Benoit to Makovsky's win against Jorgensen. So I'm gonna take Makovsky. Both these guys seem like pretty good grapplers. I think Makovsky, I believe he's a little bit bigger, but I expect him to edge it out here. But I think this should be an exciting fight. Next up at bantamweight, two newcomers, Cody Gibson versus Aljamain Sterling. Again, two guys I don't know, newcomers. They don't have a page here that I can look up, so can't make a pick there. Next up at bantamweight, Rafael Asuncao versus Pedro Munoz. Asuncao has been on a real good tear. He clearly won his last fight against Dillashaw. It was a back and forth fight. A lot of people thought it was controversial, but I scored that for Asuncao. Thought he showed very good counter striking in that fight. Every time Dillashaw would try to close the distance, come in close, Asuncao fired off combinations every single time and looked like he was really hitting Dillashaw a lot harder than Dillashaw was on him. He also has a submission win over Von Lee before that, where he showed some pretty slick grappling. Had a decision win over Mike Easton, which was a pretty uneventful fight. TKO'd Issei Tamura as well before that, but Asuncao, very skilled guy on the feet, especially in that Issei Tamura fight. I want to say he threw a spinning back fist in that fight. I can't quite remember, but the last fight with Dillashaw, again, he showed great counter boxing, and he showed really great guillotines, jumping on a guillotine, and he had the anaconda grip on that front headlock guillotine, and I thought it was real good. Pedro Munoz, I can't tell you anything about him. I don't know, but Asuncao's been around the game for a long time. He's fought Faber, fought big guys, so I have to take Asuncao here. And just a quick note on this fight. I remember a few weeks ago Eddie Wineland stepping up to take this fight, and I thought that would have been a perfect matchup. Really quick turnaround for Wineland, but I never heard why that fight didn't get made. I don't know if Wineland wasn't cleared, but I thought that was pretty surprising that they weren't able to put that together. I think that would have been a perfect matchup. Asuncao's closing in on that title shot, I think. Next up at women's bantamweight, Alexis Davis taking on Jessica Ai. Alexis Davis in her last fight put me to sleep, and I'm just being honest. Her and Carmouche were circling around the cage. Carmouche had her back to the fence, and I don't remember anything else but Davis throwing a bunch of leg kicks and kind of short jabs, and I think I fell asleep in that fight around the first round. And when I looked back up in the third round, they were still circling the cage doing the same thing. Her fight before that against Rosie Sexton, she really gassed in that fight, but was able to win that with her wrestling and get top position. And Jessica Ai, in her last fight, had a real back and forth slugfest with Sarah Kaufman. Both of them had their moments, and Jessica Ai, she showed grit. She seemed competent on the feet. I think a bit more technical than Kaufman. She wasn't quite going, just throwing haymakers, but she seemed to have a good jab, a good cross, pick her shots pretty well. I have to go with Jessica Ai here. I think Alexis Davis has fought better competition, although I didn't really follow women's MMA before they were in the UFC. But I think Alexis Davis does have the better resume. But in her last few fights, I haven't seen that fire from her. Like, she's really trying to finish and really trying to go after the win. And Jessica Ai, I think, showed in her last fight with Kaufman, she's more willing to, make a statement. And I think she's going to be a lot more aggressive than Alexis Davis. I don't know how she'll be able to deal with the wrestling, though, of Davis. Could go to Davis, but I'm taking Ai. I think she'll box up Davis on the feet. Decision. Next up, onto the main card, Robert Whitaker versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Really excited for this fight. Whitaker is a guy I really liked since his days on Tough Smashes. Real karate stylist. Both these guys are actually, but Robert Whitaker, he won the Tough Smashes show, and the competition there was really weak, but he won the finale. He beat Bradley Scott in the finale there, then beat Colton Smith in a really impressive performance where he completely dominated Smith on the feet and was able to TKO him in the third round, and then had a real back and forth fight in his last outing against Court McGee where he fell short, but I thought that fight could have easily gone either way. He does have a tendency to get cracked, though. In both the Colton Smith and the Court McGee fight, he was dropped, I believe, at least once in each fight. And Whitaker, like I said, very good karate, kickboxing kind of style. Picks his shots very well. Pretty, I don't want to say methodical, but he times his shots very well. He has in that last fight with Court McGee had a one combination that really impressed me. I think it was a jab cross followed by a roundhouse kick to the head, and it just it came off seamlessly, very quick. Like, the kick followed the punches extremely quickly, and I thought that was really impressive. Stephen Thompson, on the other hand, a guy that I was really high on when he came in the UFC, knocked out Dan Stitgen, and then lost a real tough fight to Matt Brown, went to decision. And then in the Nishan Burrell fight, I thought he showed great difficulty in keeping distance, keeping Nishan Burrell away from him. But he got the decision there. And then in his last fight against Chris Clements, I thought he showed a lot of improvement. He was able to show a bit of a takedown game in there and got the TKO. I think Thompson is a guy who's improving, working really hard on his ground game and his wrestling game. And I think that's where he's going to win this fight. Robert Whitaker, we really haven't seen any of his ground game or his wrestling either on Tough Smashes or in the UFC so far. I think if Thompson's smart, that's what he's going to do, is take Whitaker down. If it stays on the feet, I think it's more competitive, but I still like Thompson. Whitaker, I think, has some trouble putting combinations together and also really opening up and going for the kill. In that Cormier fight, there were a few times where he had him hurt, I thought, and could have really pounced on McGee, but he kind of, throws a few shots, throws a good combination, and then backs off and takes some time to reset. Whitaker does. Stephen Thompson, I think, he's a bit more active with the striking, makes it more of a brawl. Again, I'm high on Whitaker. I really liked what I've seen from him, but I'm going to go with Thompson here. I think if he's continued his development with his wrestling game and ground game, I think that's where we might see Whitaker exposed here. So I'm taking Thompson by decision. Next up at welterweight, Mike Quicksand Pyle versus TJ Waldburger. Two real crafty guys. You have a real crafty veteran in Mike Pyle who, every time he puts a good win streak together, he loses. But he's done very well to stick around the elite level of the game, and doing pretty well against a lot competition much younger than him. And then TJ Waldburger, he got knocked out pretty devastatingly and lost pretty convincingly against Adlan Amagov in his last fight. Tried to close the distance, go for a takedown, and Amagov, when I believe Waldburger was in on a leg, he just hit him with short shots from clinch range and was able to put him out cold. But TJ Waldburger, this guy is a submission wizard, a submission monster. The guys he subbed, haven't been great competition. Actually, pretty kind of low level. Mike Stump, Jake Het, but Nick Catone, more of a mid-level guy, I think, and he was able to sub him. But you can tell Waldburger is very crafty, very talented on the ground. Gets arm bars, gets triangles from very kind of unorthodox setups, especially against Jake Het. But against Brian Ebersol, after knocking him down on the feet in the first round, basically couldn't keep Ebersol off from the top of him, and was able to threaten with the triangle choke on several occasions, but Ebersol, he being the crafty veteran he is, he chose to stay on top and really wasn't deterred from those triangle submission attempts, and was able to stay on top and kind of ground and pound Waldburger. Nick Catone was having real success with the takedowns as well, keeping Waldburger down and ground and pounding him. And Mike Pyle is a solid grappler. His chin hasn't held up too well, especially in his last fight against Matt Brown, was knocked out cold. Rory McDonald was able to TKO him with ground and pound. Rick Story nearly knocked him out, dropped him in a big way in their fight. Mike Pyle, really skilled, well-rounded guy. He has some submission skills himself, but on the feet, he's looked great in the tear he was on before he lost his last fight to Matt Brown. TKOing James Head using knees and punches. He had the tie clinch in that fight and was able to land a knee to the chin. He one-shot KO'd Josh Neer and Ricardo Funch. So the guy has power on his feet, but his chin, again, I don't know if that can hold up. He's been knocked out several times, as I said. Was even knocked out by Jake Ellenberger. That was a long time ago, and he's suffered two TKO losses since then. But Waldburger, haven't seen much of his stand up. He did drop Eversole, as I mentioned, and I feel that because Pyle's chin is pretty suspect at this point, I think there's a chance Waldburger could crack him on the feet. I don't think Waldburger, over an extended period of time, over several rounds, I don't think that Waldburger could hang with Pyle on the feet. On the ground, Waldburger is very good, but Pyle is a good top control guy, good positional grappler. We really saw that in his fight with John Hathaway. And from Waldburger's loss against Ebersol, really being controlled with the wrestling, and even though he's still able to throw up submission attempts, really couldn't get up off the bottom and let Ebersol kind of pound him out and pound out a decision. I think Pyle's going to do the same thing. I think he's going to look for the takedown and just stay on top of Waldburger, win on position, use some ground and pound. I'm taking Pyle, but again, I'm giving Waldburger a chance to crack Pyle on the feet. I also think you could sub him. Very talented submission guy, but I think Pyle's a little too experienced and crafty himself on the ground to just get subbed by Waldburger real easily. So I'm picking Pyle by decision. Next up at welterweight, this fight is really flown under the radar. I think Rory McDonald versus Damian Maia. Real important fight for both guys. Both guys coming off of disappointing losses and big fights. Rory McDonald, this was a guy who was just running through people very impressively. His win over Nate Diaz was great. Had some great suplexes in that fight. TKO'd Mike Pyle in their fight, using ground and pound. We already talked about that. Took Che Mills down and smashed him, TKO'd him. I thought his boxing looked very crisp, put combinations together very well against Penn. But then just from the Penn fight to the Jake Ellenberger fight, just made a complete transition with his fighting style. Was very tentative, sat back a lot. Basically out-jabbed Ellenberger for the whole fight. Ellenberger would try to get inside, and McDonald was able to keep him away at the jab, but never did anything else. Wasn't willing to follow up, and just looked like a completely different fighter from the guy who, beat up BJ Penn and used vicious ground and pound on Pyle and Mills. In the Robbie Lawler fight, I think he did a better job of kind of getting back to his wrestling. He took Lawler down a few times, couldn't do much with it, but again on the feet, just too hesitant, sat back too much, and Lawler, he realized that, and just by coming forward and pretty recklessly, Lawler came forward, was able to get the decision there, and almost finished McDonald late in that fight. And I believe McDonald, I think it was on the MMA Hour after his loss to Lawler, and he said that he realized, how tentative he was in his two previous losses, or his two previous fights against Ellenberger and Lawler, and he said he was going to get back to his aggressive ways, looking for the finish. And I believe him. Guy's super talented. I think he's a guy who still has potential to be champion. One of these new breed fighters who's come up training mixed martial arts. Damian Maia, on the other hand, had a very impressive little win streak since dropping down to welterweight. He had the rear naked choke against Rick Story, and showed very good grappling against John Fitch. His last fight, though, with Jake Shields took me by surprise, but both Maia had his moments in there. I think he even briefly hurt Shields on the feet at one point with strikes, and Shields was covering up on the ground, but really Shields' grappling and wrestling top control was able to use that against Maia and grind out the decision. Against Rory McDonald, if McDonald shows up like he fought Ellenberger and Lawler, I think Maia will be a little too aggressive, trying to close the distance, make it a grappling fight like he did against John Fitch, just trying to stick to McDonald like glue. But McDonald comes in here looking to finish. I think he can use his wrestling to take Maia down. We've seen Maia have some trouble with wrestlers, Chris Weidman, Mark Munoz. Those guys were able to get him down, and Jake Shields as well in their last fight. On the feet, though, Damian Maia he won't have a chance if McDonald is really engaging in the stand-up. McDonald has shown, very, very good skills on the feet, putting together combinations real well, and real power in his ground and pound. I don't think he hasn't knocked out anyone on their feet yet, but I think he just has way too much power for Maia. And Maia, I think he's come a long way with his stand-up. He's won a few decisions against not so great competition using his stand-up, but has never really, hurt anyone with his striking. And I think he would just get blown through on the feet if he tried to kickbox with Rory McDonald for the whole fight. But I'm taking McDonald here. I do think he can finish Maia. I think McDonald is bigger, uses wrestling, getting Maia down. And again, on the feet, I like McDonald. The only way I see Maia winning is if McDonald is really kind of hesitant on his feet, laying back too much. And I think Maia could make it a real dogfight with his grappling, like he did against John Fitch. That's how Maia's going to win, I think. But I'm taking McDonald. I think he's going to come back in a big way here. Next up, light heavyweight, Daniel Cormier versus Patrick Cummins. Don't know anything about Cummins. He doesn't have a page here. Real disappointing that Rashad fell out. I thought that was going to be a real important fight, and I heard that they were going to rebook that at 172, but I guess Cormier wanted to stay on this card, ask for an opponent, and got Cummins. Cormier, undefeated, but I felt like this guy, Cormier in the UFC, I feel has taken a step down from the guy who was in Strikeforce. I haven't seen the Cormier who knocked out Bigfoot Silva and the Cormier who boxed up Josh Barnett, threw him on his head for 5 rounds. I haven't seen that guy in the fights against Frank Mir, Roy Nelson. And I don't think we can quite say that Mir and Nelson are that much better, more elite fighters than Barnett and Silva were. I think they're about the same as far as skill level goes, and Barnett finished Mir in the first round. So I think Cormier has been more cautious since coming to the UFC. Still good, He won both fights easily, wasn't in trouble at all. I actually thought he used pretty good boxing against Roy Nelson, was able to get in and out of range pretty well. Pretty quick on his feet, especially for a heavyweight. Obviously has really good wrestling. We saw that against Barnett, just I think world-class wrestling as far as wrestling is concerned in MMA. And we saw that big power against Bigfoot Silva. I don't know if he doesn't, especially against Frank Mir and Roy Nelson, just didn't. He was winning both those fights easily, and he didn't seem like he was really willing to go for the knockout and get the finish. But Cormier is a super skilled guy. Interested to see how it goes for him at light heavyweight. This will be his first fight there, but I expect him to win this fight. Obviously, it would be a huge upset if Cummins won. And I wouldn't be too surprised if Cormier won this by decision, just, kind of by the way he's been fighting in his last few fights. On to the main event, women's bantamweight belt, Ronda Rousey versus Sarah McMann. Ronda Rousey, I think she's on her way to becoming one of these unbeatable champs in the UFC. Looked good, great in her last fight against Miesha Tate. People say she's a one-trick pony. They say she's not good on her feet. That's ridiculous. She beat Miesha Tate on the feet. There were a few moments where Rousey looked like she got rocked on the feet, stunned a bit, but she's aggressive on her feet. She comes forward, closes the distance, and she wins the striking battle in most of her fights, at least the ones I've seen. Even the first fight with Miesha Tate, it was competitive on the feet. Liz Carmouche, there wasn't much stand-up going on there, but Rousey is not terrible on the feet. She is at least average there, maybe even a little better. I think her striking looks good. She really uses it to close the distance, and then once she's inside, really implement that judo game that opponents can't deal with. And once she's on the ground, it's over. I know Miesha Tate was able to get out of that first armbar in their last fight, but I think Rousey still hurt her really badly with that first attempt and was able to finish her off on the second one. Sarah McMann, on the other hand, I haven't seen any of her fights before the UFC. I've only seen her last fight, her UFC debut against Sheila Gaff, where she took her down and was able to finish the fight pretty quickly with ground and pound. I'm going to take Rousey by submission, probably, I think. I just think she's so talented. All of that judo experience, Olympic level experience. She's so good on the ground, so good at getting that armbar, so good at getting people down with the judo. However, Sarah McMann, from what I've seen, I know Sheila Gaff, probably not very very good fighter. The UFC cut her. I'm not sure how much that says, given the women's division is still pretty thin in the UFC. But in that last fight, what I saw in McMann, obviously we know she's an Olympic caliber wrestler, but she looked to me like she really knows what she's doing on the ground. A lot more so than Miesha Tate. And Miesha Tate she was able to get on top of Rousey for a bit in their last fight. But she was looking for ground and pound more, and I think McMann is a much better positional grappler. She got the crucifix in her last fight against Gaff. McMann, just from what I saw there, I think she's a very solid wrestler, and I think there's a fair chance that wrestling game might be the secret weapon to kind of shut down Rousey's armbar submission game, especially if McMann can get on top. I'm real interested to see, whether Rousey will be able to take McMann down like she did to Miesha Tate, because in her last fight, Miesha Tate shot in for a lot of takedowns, and Rousey countered those takedown attempts with, judo tosses. I don't think she can do that against McMann, and if Rousey is the one to initiate the takedown, I think McMahon's takedown defense will be a lot better than what Rousey's seen before. But again, I think if McMann can take Rousey down and get on top, I think there's a good chance she could either just hold her down or use some ground and pound. She looked like a very good wrestler to me. But I will take Rousey just because, she's been the champion and she's been so incredible with all of her, first round armbar finishes, and showed a lot of heart against Miesha Tate last time. But I'm taking Rousey, but I'm looking forward to this fight, and I think McMahon's going to prove a much tougher test than a lot of people are anticipating. So those are my predictions for UFC 170, Rousey versus McMann. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Really appreciate it. Please like the video, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe. I'll do a recap for this video shortly after the event takes place. So look out for that. Take care. I'll see you guys later. Bye.